Every day, school buses safely transport our children, but only if drivers follow the law. Flashing lights and a stop sign on a bus mean you must stop. Passing a school bus in this situation isn't just illegal, it's dangerous. Children's lives are at risk when drivers ignore this signal. Protect them by stopping, no exceptions. Failure to stop has serious consequences. Do your part for safety and your community. Flashing red lights on a school bus mean you must stop immediately. It's the law. It's about safety. It's about lives.
And I have the great pleasure of serving as your Secretary of Education. I'm joined this morning by my colleagues. To the right, Commissioner Kershaw of Early Education and Care. To my left, on the other side of Valentina, Commissioner of the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education, Pedro Martinez. And then to his left, Commissioner of Higher Ed, Noe Ortega. So just to kind of set the table this morning, I'll say a little bit about what we do, and I'll turn it over to the commissioners to introduce themselves. And then, as has been said, we'll talk a little bit about the grad requirements, and then just really interested in engaging with you to hear what's top of mind, whatever questions you might have. Just really quickly, by way of background, I spent 23 years in the K-12 space as a teacher, principal. Last stop for me was as superintendent of the Lynn Public Schools, great city of Lynn. Then had the privilege of joining the Healey-Driscoll administration as Secretary of Education. I will tell you, the question that I get asked a lot in this role is, what is it that you actually do as Secretary of Education? And I'll tell you, my response is the same every time. I work in very close partnership with my colleagues here at the table to create the conditions for people to realize their dreams from birth to K-12 all the way to their experience as adults in our institutions of public higher education. Naturally, the next question is, well, how do you create the conditions for people to realize their dreams? I'd say three ways, substantively. First, we work on policies, propose and elevate policies that create those conditions, that bring to the fore our values around equity, around opportunity, around experience, supports. Policy is a big piece of our work. Budget is a big piece of our work. Each year, since Governor Healey took over in January of 23, we proposed a budget north of $12 billion. It's about 20% of the state's total budget. I think the only secretariat that proposes more, has a bigger piece of the state budget pie, is Health and Human Services. But the fact that education is right there says a lot about what we believe in this state, and the importance of education. And then the final way that we sort of work to create the conditions for people to realize their dreams, and this is a little sort of less formulaic than budget policy, is using our voices, right? We are leaders that are very much in the community, present in communities. I've done this substantively with each of the commissioners. We are visiting schools, we are in communities, we're having conversations to both understand what is top of mind, what the challenges are, to observe practices in place, but then to also articulate the policies that we're working on, the budget investments that are having impact in communities, and also what we believe in this administration. I don't need to spend a lot of time talking about the need for that, but we all know that our fellow community members need to know what it is the leadership in this state believes, what we're leaning into, what we are not changing despite pressures from outside of the state. And so that's a big piece of how we work to create the conditions as well. So why don't I now turn it to the incredible leader who leads the effort to ensure that our youngest students are getting what they need, as well as the providers. I'll turn to Commissioner Kershaw.
Thank you, Secretary. Thank you, Valentina. Really, really pleased for the opportunity to be here. As you know, early education and childcare is in every one of our communities, and it has been an incredibly high priority for this administration. And I think coming out of the pandemic, just a greater recognition of the importance of early childhood education and childcare for driving our economy and making sure families have the opportunities they need. So this administration has been really committed really around the dual purpose. So making sure we are where it all starts in early childhood education, building the foundational skills for later success, for school readiness, for greater economic opportunities for children. It's an equity investment in closing the opportunity gap. And it's where the skills start around literacy and math, science and technology, and even more importantly, social and emotional skills. And that's the foundation that is going to lead to some of the outcomes we want through our graduation council and into our higher education system. At the same time, we have a sort of a dual mission, which is around economic opportunity for families. So we see childcare as really economic infrastructure within our communities. Our childcare programs, whether they're center-based programs or family childcare, are small businesses operating in our communities, bringing in jobs, and not only allowing the folks on the program that are working to have economic opportunity, but supporting their families to be able to achieve their economic mobility goals. So we're kind of a twofer in that way. Or we like to say we're the workforce behind the workforce. This administration has committed to nearly doubling the budget at the Department of Early Education and Care. We are now a $1.7 billion agency, and those investments have been paying off in really meaningful ways in our communities. We've seen expansion, and unlike many other states following the pandemic, we are now well above our pre-pandemic levels in terms of childcare capacity in our communities, adding 7,500 in the last year alone, new seats for families, 450 new programs across the Commonwealth, and those are small businesses in all of your communities, and they are employing educators who now have new pathways. We've invested in new professional development opportunities. Early childhood education is the fastest growing sector for apprenticeships in Massachusetts right now, and that is leading to new entrants for educators into the field and more meaningful opportunities. We have higher education scholarships and loan forgiveness programs for folks who are working in early education, and that's resulted in more staff staying in programs. We've seen the turnover rate in our child care programs go down. One of the other big things that this administration is committed to and that the agency has taken on is expanding access to affordable programs. We are now serving nearly 70,000 families through child care financial assistance. That's up 10,000 since this administration came into office. So that means families and communities are getting help paying for childcare, being able to enroll in their program and get that financial aid or financial assistance in their programs. We've also created, in addition to the investments that we're making in our own systems, we're also investing in communities. So we are committed to moving universally accessible preschool within each of our communities. We have something called the Commonwealth Preschool Partnership Initiative, which is a state and school district partnership that makes sure that children in the community have access to high quality early childhood education to prepare them for school and life success. And that's been a really big, important commitment from this administration. Finally, I just want to say that I think one of the things that's unique that's happening in early education and care in Massachusetts is that we realize that investments in our system directly were not going to bring the full transformation that we felt was needed across the Commonwealth. So the governor created the Interagency Task Force through an executive order. Interagency Task Force on Child Care and Early Education. It's co-chaired by Secretary Tutwiler, Secretary Jones of Labor and Workforce Development, and Secretary Healey of Economic Development. And it is representing all the secretariats across state government sitting together to not just look at what do we need to invest in EEC and our department, but what can all the other state agencies and secretariats do to think about childcare as economic development. So we have new resources and new opportunities. So there's a business front door program that happens at economic development. Now we have a navigator for childcare programs to make that program more accessible. Even in technology, we've put out new devices for our childcare programs to be able to access internet opportunities and do business with the Commonwealth in new ways. And the formal workforce system has come to the table to recognize that childcare is a key goal in making sure we're competitive as an economy. So I'm really excited about the work that the agency is doing and that this administration is committed to around ensuring that the children have the start they need to access our other systems and that our economies are supported through stronger investments in childcare.
So, hello everyone. I think good afternoon or good morning still. President Martinez, I'm the newest person I think on the team, but frankly very, very inspired and motivated to work with such a strong team. All of us are very evidence-driven, very data-driven, and also very value-driven. And so I'll share with you my perspective on I want to hold two realities together. So we have we live into complexity in Massachusetts, which I love. So on one reality, I am heartened by the amazing level of investment and commitment to education. I say this quite a bit as I'm visiting all districts across the state. I think right now I visited over more than 60 schools since the year started in 60 districts all across the Commonwealth. And one of the things that I continue to comment on is there is such a strong alignment from Commissioner Kershaw to myself to Commissioner Ortega to the Secretary around all of us really do believe, one, we lead with an equity lens, we understand what the needs are, and we also can really see the opportunity for alignment of resources among all three of us. And we're, in K-12, for example, we are still #1 in the country when it comes to some of the most important measures. Advanced placement, for example, which is students getting college credit with advanced coursework. We're still very, very strong in that. We see some of the strongest, I've seen some of the strongest career tech programs that we're investing in here in the Commonwealth. We're also really building out our early college program, which I'm happy to talk about more details. On the other side, I also see the challenges, and I'll say these are all opportunities. We are severely behind the rest of the country when it comes to the practices for our multilingual students. This comes back to our history of when we dismantled bilingual programs and dual language programs during the 2003 to 2017 era. That put us behind the rest of the country when it comes to multilingual practices. So that's the challenge. Huge opportunity is we get to build that. We get to build that in a Massachusetts way with the wonderful diversity we have in our communities, whether it's our Haitian community or Dominican community or our Brazilian community. We get to build that. And so I see huge opportunities. It is a lot of work because we have to build those teacher pipelines, but significant opportunities. I also see many ways as I'm partnering with both commissioners around how do we strengthen children going into high quality early childhood programs, coming in a strong way into our K-12 systems and transitioning into higher ed. We have an amazing footprint in Massachusetts, and there's a level of deep investment in all three of the areas. So I see significant opportunities to leverage those investments. And as I'm talking to superintendents, I'm talking to school leaders, we're talking to students and teachers, what I see is a desire to partner and collaborate. A true desire to actually say, look, we can see where we're struggling, we can see where our students are struggling. We want to partner together with the agency to really leverage both practices, to leverage resources. And so, like I said, and the last thing I'll say, everybody, one of the things that I love, and we're modeling this, when we see challenges, instead of us trying to weaken, standards and practices, we're doing the opposite. So when the MCAS referendum, went through, and MCAS is now longer a graduation requirement, we said, Secretary and I said, let's double down and actually have more rigorous standards, because the MCAS requirement was not a rigorous standard. And then also let's listen to what our stakeholders are saying. And what was the #1 request that we got from students, parents, educators? Financial literacy. I did not expect that. That was the #1 request that said, make that a graduation requirement. That is something that we're very weak on. There's a level of entrepreneurialism in our communities, and they need that kind of knowledge. But also make sure that we don't lower standards for multilingual students. Don't lower the standards for students with disabilities. Really, push yourselves to create a rigorous set of standards, and then let's really talk about how we provide the support systems. So we call it targeted universalism. We set a rigorous goal, and then we target the supports to get children to there. So like I said, I'm more than happy to go into that. And like I said, I will say I'm a huge fan of Commissioner Ortega, because he and I have been thought partners from the first time we talked. So Commissioner Ortega.
Thank you, Commissioner Martinez. And I want to just quickly pause and appreciate something, because we do these kinds of presentations all the time, right? And as I look around the room, you have a really diverse representation of folks here, right? And then when I think about this table, the same thing. Kudos to this administration for recognizing that in our education sector, we need to make sure that we have representation that folks can look up to in order to make sure that they feel like, not just that they're represented, but we're taking their circumstances into consideration when we're putting together policy. So it's a great pleasure to sit up here with my colleagues. If I had to summarize what I do at the Department of Higher Education, is that we're in the business of trying to make people's dreams come true in terms of their aspiration. And I can only do that through the work that's done by my colleagues in terms of ensuring access for all young learners. Because we know that if they have access to an early ed program, it's going to change their trajectory and their likelihood of going to college. And then Commissioner Martinez and I talk all the time, if you don't get the skills, the knowledge, and the tools that you need as you're going through our K-12 system, right, it will lessen the opportunity that you have to go to college. And that for us is a very important strategy of trying to achieve the goals that we have in Massachusetts. We've done two things that I'm really proud of. We've done more things, but two things that I want to highlight that have happened over the course of the last 3 years that I've been here in Massachusetts. The first is we've made college free for those who could least afford it. We've made community college free for everyone. And we've made our public four-year institutions, whether it's UMass or the 9 state U's, free for students who are Pell eligible in this state. But we didn't stop there. We recognized that the circumstances in terms of finances and the economy is shifting. And we know that families making up to $110,000 as well in this state struggle on the decision of what they're going to do with their students. Many of them are first-generation folks who maybe went to college that find themselves still challenged by being able to afford college. We also put programs in place for them where we reduce the price by half if they want to go to our state universities, right? And they can also go to our community college for free. That's an amazing thing. And over the past several years, we've seen, and hopefully you've heard us talk about this, the impact it's had in enrollment. While many states have been struggling to incrementally increase enrollment back to pre-pandemic levels, we've been able to increase it in the double digits, right? In terms of 10, 15, 12% from year to year. And that's been fantastic with regards to the impact of this program. So that's something that I really want to make sure that we highlight of effectiveness for the state in terms of making college affordable. We've also paid attention to a narrative happening out there in the public. Many people are questioning whether college is worth it, whether someone should go, whether you're going to earn enough money. Several months ago, in partnership with the governor and all the folks here at this table, we put out a report that said in Massachusetts, if you learn, you will earn. College pays. For our associate students, they earn up to $20,000 more above anyone who does not have an associate degree, right, and only has a high school diploma. And those with a bachelor's degree, up to $30,000, right? And that is fantastic because many people are saying that college isn't worth it. Here in Massachusetts, not only is it affordable, but it will pay in terms of dividends to the students, right? And so we've been working really hard to make sure that this message is known. And so hopefully with you in the room here, we could do that. And then I'll end on this last thing, which to us has become important. I think is the reason why I started off with appreciating the diversity. It's been all with the intention of making sure that we recognize that in Massachusetts, we've been known as a leader in education for some time. The question emerges that we ask ourselves all the time, are we the leader for all, or are we the leader for some? And if you look at the equity outcomes in the state, the performance and the premium is not made available to everyone in the same way. Black and brown students in this state struggle with regards to completion, access to college, and we need to address that. And all our work has been focused on closing that equity gap. And so all the things that we do, whether it's early college, thinking about more seats in the early ed space, making sure that we ensure that people who felt like they don't have an opportunity or feel diminished because of the narrative happening out there in the politics, that when they look at us, they know that they have that access. And then we truly double down on the meaning for all. Because I often feel we say that term rather loosely, especially when there was a time before I got here, 3 years ago, where we were still struggling to see whether all included folks who were not documented. But in this state, the all definition was extended to ensure that even those students who may not have the documentation needed also are eligible for admissions into our institutions at in-state tuition, but also all of our financial aid programs. So something like Free Community College is also made available to them. We have lots of work to do in order to improve the outcomes that we're doing, but I wanted to sort of shed light on that overarching picture to speak about the importance of our work from that perspective. I'll hand it back to you, Valentina, or Mr. Secretary. I'm not sure what we want to do next in terms of the agenda.
Thank you, Commissioner, and thank you everyone for giving us this brief introduction to everything that we've been doing. I'll just let it to the Secretary and to the Commissioner to talk about like the school requirements,
Sure.
the regulations.
Do you want me to kick it off, Commissioners? Okay. We take our show on the road. We've been working closely, Commissioner already alluded to this. In January of 25, Governor Healey signed an executive order calling for the establishment of a council to take a look at the graduation requirements in Massachusetts. As Commissioner said, the ballot question, which eliminated mass MCAS as a graduation requirement, landed us in a place of not having a real definition for what it means to graduate from high school in Massachusetts. This council, through this executive order, was tasked with coming up with that definition. What does it mean to earn a high school diploma in Massachusetts? What are the substantive experiences and courses that all students should take? And importantly, how do we know as they progress through high school that students are meeting the high bar that we've established? And so that council got to work immediately in the month of March, 32 members strong. The first thing we did was listen. We engaged in a listening tour, public listening sessions across the state. We administered a survey. The response rate was high. We got almost 8,000 responses from people across the Commonwealth of all different backgrounds. And we took that and we did a lot of research, right? We're in a sort of an interesting time nationally where a number of states have elevated or rethought what it means to graduate in their state. And so we have the opportunity to look at what are other states thinking about, what are other countries thinking about in terms of secondary experiences. So we brought all that together in terms of the research, all the feedback that we received through the listening sessions and the surveys, and put out a sort of first step in our work, a report that was released on December 1st that articulates a foundation for where we are. There's 3 pieces to it. I'll just briefly speak to it and I'll turn to the Commissioner. One is the foundation of learning, meaning foundationally, what are the courses that we expect all students to engage with over the course of high school. Back in 2008, there was something called a mass core that was articulated. It was a recommendation to high schools. You don't have to, but we recommend that students take these courses throughout high school because they align with what our public institutions of higher ed expect students to engage with throughout their high school experience. That proposal has actually been studied pretty substantively by the Annenberg Institute out of Brown University. And there's some there with that recommendation of mass core, right? Students who engage in mass core over the course of high school, graduate at higher rates, matriculate to college at higher rates, and also persist in college at higher rates than the students who do not do that. So foundationally, we proposed a coursework requirement that would allow any student, when they graduate, to be eligible for access to our institution, our 4-year institutions of higher learning. I just want to pause there. Commissioner and I feel really strongly about this. Many people embrace this. There are some who say, it sounds like you want every student to go to college. I think you just heard what Commissioner Ortega said about what it means when you earn an associate's degree in Massachusetts, what it means when you earn a bachelor's degree in Massachusetts. It's not a small thing, and we've known for a long time that the second most impactful variable in social mobility and economic mobility is education and higher education. So we think we are setting our students, and I appreciate Commissioner Ortega saying all means all of our students up. We think we're setting all of our students up for realizing their dreams. Whether they decide to go on to college after high school is up to them, but they'll be able to because they've engaged with the coursework sequence that allows for that. So foundational learning. We want to think substantively about how we know that students are meeting our expectations. We proposed a hybrid assessment sequence, one with end of course assessments. These will be a few thoughtfully chosen courses at the end of which students will take a state-developed, state-administered, state-assessed assessment. And then the other piece, later on in their high school career, students will either do a portfolio or a capstone assessment. This allows us the opportunity to assess some of those durable skills that the employment community wants students to be strong in. That's the assessment piece. And then finally, the final bucket is one that we call prepared for what's next. These are the things that we expect all students to engage in to ensure that when they leave high school, they're ready to go on and do whatever their heart desires. One, we want them to have a plan, right? And so there's an evidence-based program already in about 230 high schools in Massachusetts called MyCap. Stands for My Career and Academic Plan. We want students thinking about their future as early as possible, ideally middle school, but high school, when they set foot, we want them thinking about and engaging with the caring adults in the high school community about their future. The MyCap program allows for that. Commissioner mentioned financial literacy was the most talked about and requested academic area that both students and parents and everybody wants to make sure that students have that skill set, that knowledge base. We're still working on how best to make that come to life in this proposal, but we know that we will definitely be dropping an anchor there. We will require all students to complete the free application for federal student aid, or FAFSA, with an opt-out provision where it's needed. Why? We know that students who complete the FAFSA in high school, north of 80% of them actually matriculate to school. We want to make sure that students know they complete the FAFSA, all the things that Commissioner Ortega just talked about: free community college, accessible four-year institution access. Often students don't know about that until they complete the FAFSA. We want every student to do that with an opt-out provision. And then the last thing is, we want to create opportunities for students to sort of strut their proverbial stuff, right? Are there, somebody write that down. That sounds good. I like that. Right now in Massachusetts, we have one statewide seal that a student can earn in high school, recognizing students who are bilingual and biliterate. It's called the Seal of Biliteracy. Students who perform at a certain rate on the ELA MCAS and then perform at a certain rate on a language-based assessment can earn that seal. I feel proud to say that 2 of my children have earned it. I've got a third, and he's going to earn it also. He doesn't know that yet, but he will. We want to think about, are there other things that we could lift up that allow students, that are aligned with our values, that will allow students to strut their proverbial stuff. I went on for way too long, Commissioner. I'm sorry.
No. I'll just build on what the Secretary is saying. So again, when we talk about raising the bar, this is what we mean. The one thing I would say, and Secretary say that, and I say this all the time, don't look at this as individual items. It's meant to be a package. So with the so-called around having social and economic mobility. So again, I won't repeat the information that Commissioner Ortega is saying, but I will tell you this information that he's shared, I'm sharing it with every superintendent. I'm telling them very directly and saying, if you want to live in Massachusetts, I've been in other parts of the country, maybe this is not true there, but in Massachusetts, if you want social economic mobility, the data that gives us the most evidence that that's possible is a college education. Whether it's an associate's degree, whether it's a bachelor's degree, when you think about the CEOs, imagine the opportunities of elevating early college programs. These are students that are already in college classes while they're in high school, so they're getting ahead. Imagine elevating in the career tech world actual certifications that are industry recognized, but also can have college credit, like stackable credentials. Because how many of us go back to school when we're adults, right? Maybe to get graduate degrees or to finish certain degrees. We don't want our students to start from zero. So we want to be frankly clear. And this is not a debate about, values of college. It is what the data and the evidence tells us about Massachusetts. Our cost of living here is the new Massachusetts. It is different than the South Texas, for example, where I was at for 7 years in San Antonio. It's a very different. So I want us to be honest with our families. Just to comment on the seal by literacy, since that seal, came into play, we have seen an exponential growth of students earning that seal by literacy. And as the secretary said, it really is a way for us to highlight amazing, not only to hit the minimum standards, but even excel. So imagine, thinking about creative ways around seals for our students with disabilities. Students that not only can get the certificate or diploma, but actually get into an employment program, right? How do we make sure whether they're accessing the community college or going into preparing so they can be independent in the workplace? So the last thing I'll say about the grad standards, everyone, and we made this commitment, the next steps are gonna be.
Are there any specific challenges that Latino students have faced with the MCAS that now with this new framework could help address them?
So I think there's a couple of things we're trying to do with it. So end of course assessments are part of the requirements, and just one thing to clarify. We see an opportunity, as long as we get federal approval, to phase in the course assessments and phase out MCAS. So we would replace the MCAS, so that's one. Why would this be better? One, because we're tying it to the course. So imagine, for example, in the course assessment in algebra, and in the course assessment either in 9th or 10th grade English. Our English standards are interesting. They actually cross, multi-years, so like they're together 9th and 10th grade standards. So think of the opportunities working with our teachers of how do we make sure children have access to the content, they have access to, just the supports, and we don't see an assessment being the determinant of graduation. We want to change the narrative on that. We want to make the assessments be more of a tool, because remember, part of the requirements is Mass 4, which is 4 years of English, 4 years of math, 3 years of lab sciences, 3 years of social studies. And so what I'm concerned about is our students have to be able to master the skills of algebra to go to Algebra 2, to go to stats, or to go to pre-cal. They gotta have enough skills in either the comprehension or writing skills to not only navigate 9th and 10th grade English, they gotta go to 11th grade English, 12th grade English. All of us who went to college, think about your courses that you have in math, in English, that are your beginning college courses. For some students, they become the courses that they cannot get through, and therefore they struggle in college. And so again, how do we make sure students are truly prepared for that content? Of course, we will look at how we handle today, for example, late multilingual students, late newcomers, right? So we will look at those practices now to see what is the best way, because again, if I'm coming in as a 16-year-old into our Commonwealth, again, there's already ways to handle that now. We're gonna learn from the districts of what works and what doesn't. So that's also gonna be another, almost a little bit of a research component, thinking with students with disabilities.
I have a, one then done.
Yeah, so the last, under MCAS, students were assessed, but also districts and schools were assessed. I'm wondering what the thinking is in this next iteration, like how will the state engage with schools and with districts that are struggling? Is there a new approach that you guys are looking at?
There is actually, and we'll have more details in the next few months. So we want to do accountability in what I call in the third way. So the first 2 ways have been hammers. We've had school districts in receivership, even now. We've had schools in receivership, we've had designations. Mixed results, by the way. I won't say that there wasn't no results, mixed results. But then we stopped, and then we did nothing. And then meanwhile, our schools struggled. So the third way is truly looking at schools across the Commonwealth that are really struggling, partnering with superintendents. And so we're in the process of beginning of rolling out this initiative. And by the way, these schools, overrepresented in multilingual students, overrepresented in kids of color, overrepresented in kids of poverty. By the way, not all high poverty districts. So there's a good mix as we're looking at the landscape. So the work we're going to be doing is partnering with those districts, really going deep in what is actually happening at the school level, what is happening in terms of structures, in terms of practices, figuring out how do we align resources. The one benefit that we have here in Massachusetts that my other states did not have, there's a high level of investment here in Massachusetts. The question is, how do we better leverage those resources? And by the way, leverage our strategies like, for example, early college partnerships that we want to create, right? So instead of just trying to improve the school, let's actually think about how we accelerate and actually put a student ahead. So how do we, also prioritize career tech investments, which by the way, these are phenomenal programs, early college, investments. So this way, it's not only just we're trying to improve the school, but we're actually taking the school to a different level where students really truly get a better experience. So this is gonna be, more detail will be coming out, but this is the initiative we're right now in the process of just starting out.
Can I just add one thing? Just by way of clarification, the MCAS still counts as part of the accountability mechanism, even though students don't need to pass it for high school graduation. The other thing that I would just, I'd be remiss if I didn't point out that this is why it's so important to have Commissioner Kershaw here and our work around early education and care. The research is overwhelming when it talks about the impact of really any early education experience on any student, but particularly those who are English as a second language, economically disadvantaged, Black. Any experience results in a stronger transition to kindergarten, less need for intervention around literacy when they're in kindergarten. So the investments that Commissioner Kershaw talked about in the beginning, the administration's commitment to universality with pre-K access in our gateway communities first. These are things that are going to have impact down the line as we think about performance in elementary school for sure, but absolutely high school.
I appreciate everything that you are talking about as far as the academic side of the schooling. I'm a mother of a high schooler, so I see it hand to hand every day. However, you have not touched the fact that the safety of attending school, whether it is high school or college, is decreasing because kids are scared. They're not scared just because of the surrounding environment, but just participating in the behavior amongst them with social media, with AI, creating accounts that are fake. I have seen personally how these impacts a student's life, and I would love to see in your requirements some behavioral skills that need to participate, because it's definitely affecting the future of their decision to going anywhere, not only college, but anywhere. They're stuck in school, just crying sometimes in the bathroom, right? So what are you doing there?
So I think there's a couple of areas. So one is there is statewide more investments in mental health. I think is something that has to continue. So that's just one that we just have to. We're working with districts also on looking at what structures they have to actually support students. And by the way, this is very also connected to what's happening around cell phones, because the reality is that the research is coming up is very clear that when students have the ability to be using their cell phones and social media during school hours, some of these issues arise from that. Of course, a lot of it also is after school, but also just creating those structures at the school level. So I've actually been heartened as I visit many high schools. They're getting very strict in the use of cell phones, even without any legislation. They're actually starting. More importantly, though, what I'm asking them is, what systems do you have in place to make sure that when a student does need help, we're seeing more investments in counselors and social workers. We're not there yet. I'll just say this, but it is something that again, that we're going to continue to encourage. As we work with schools that are struggling with the law, this is going to be one of the areas we look at as well. What is the culture of the building? How do they address issues of students feeling safe, right? What kind of climate information do they have about students? In every district I've been, we've always had a climate survey. I'm pretty sure you have 2 surveys. So really understanding where students are at. And then finally, the last is a big part of also even within our grad standards that came out really clear from students is making sure students have a voice. As we think about any high school structure. So that's just something else also that we want to continue to uphold.
Hi, how are you? Good morning and almost afternoon. I wanted to make sure that Boss Lady News, I'm here with Urban Heat 981 FM. The bilingual opportunities for English as a second language students is great, right? I think it's important that there are these additional levels of support. However, right now, Boston Public Schools does not require a second language for non-bilingual students. So if you're not already needing English as a second language, they're not making you get a second language just as a requirement. There's an insurance to make sure that non-English speakers get a chance to learn English, but what are we doing to help support the students that want to speak another language? I'm also a parent. My daughter's not required, as she's finishing her high school year, she's never been required to speak another language. Yo hablar español, because back in my day, we had to learn another language. And so what are we doing to make sure that our non-English as a second language students are getting the opportunity to get higher pay and to get those jobs? Because we all know people that speak multiple languages, employers need them.
So in the grad standards, but that's not where it stops, but let me start there. This is one of the reasons why it's so important to have course requirements. We're one of less than 10 states in the country that doesn't have any course requirements in our high schools. So think about that. Every high school gets to set their own course requirements for graduation. Language, for example, is a requirement as part of mass court. So I think we start there. I will say, my dream would be that, that we as a state really start cherishing multilingualism and having multiple languages, because it's an amazing asset. And I always tell people, being bicultural myself, I especially now as an adult, is such a gift. In a way, I feel, for others who don't have that gift, because I can lean into it, not only my language, and the food, and the culture in so many ways. That's what we would love for our students. It's one of the reasons why I really want to promote bilingualism and promote language programs, because we can start with our English learners, but I can tell you what my history has been in other districts, is that when we start there, immediately once schools build that capacity, parents will say, you know what, we want our students to also be part of these programs. And you see it interwoven, like for example, in international baccalaureate programs, definitely graduation stamps, but there's so many ways to do it. I think that the fear that districts have right now, call it that, or is because we lost that capacity, and now to build it up. And so I think part of it is us giving the permission and also saying we're gonna elevate this, and the grad standards is a really good start, but it's a very small start. Elevate it and say we're gonna commit and partner with you on building that capacity. In other words, incentivizing teachers to get the certifications. Promoting with our teacher prep programs to make sure that we attract as many students to go into bilingual and dual language programs. By the way, we have the diversity in the state. And my goodness, we have the students.
Yeah.
So we don't have any shortage of that. We have rich cultures here in our Commonwealth. So that, for me, is at least the start. So that's one of the reasons why you're hearing me really elevate this, because I really want to, I think that's the way that it started.
Thank you.
Commissioner Martinez can do interviews in Spanish.
I want the record to reflect that I have 1,500 days on Duolingo. I have vocabulary, I can't do an interview, but I can.
I'll do Sergio and then Sarah.
Pleasure, folks. Thank you for having us. Sergio from Roomba 97.7, iHeartRadio. I met the Commissioner Martinez. Haven't met Mr. Ortega and Ms. Kershaw. Thank you so much for all the work that you're doing, because without you, moms and dads wouldn't be able to get these kids in the right path. Something that comes over my mind is not many kids consider school, and maybe Commissioner Ortega could shed some light on this. However, we have not seen an attorney, engineer, or even a surgeon from YouTube. Let's be honest on that. But what are we doing in terms of trying to get these kids' attention? A lot of kids that are dropouts, a lot of parents that are, considering, hey, could I afford this or not? And reeling back to finish school and furthermore graduate. Once again, college is free thanks to FAFSA and whatnot, but what are we doing in order to promote these tools that they have? Obviously, a lot of people is just kind of, oh no, I'm just gonna be an entrepreneur. Entrepreneur of what? What do you know how to do? You know what I mean? So what are we doing as far as promoting all these tools that we have available in the state of Mass?
Yeah, I'm happy to talk about a few
Go ahead,
things.
Mal.
We do have a campaign at the moment, right? Like as an entry point, a Go Hire campaign. You can go on our website, gohire.gov. Did I get that right? Somebody can correct it at some point.
Mass.gov/go hire.
So I was not even close, right? But we can clarify the website. But the point is that is a preliminary step, right? To get a marketing campaign, which is so necessary, because we know that people, if they don't know, aren't taking advantage of it. And often we're asking ourselves the question, are we helping those who are already going? Or are we helping those who didn't go, right? And so we've got to figure out how to do that. That's the first thing. The second is, I think you heard Commissioner Martinez say the need to do something like make FAFSA a mission universal, right? And the idea here is that we still have application processes that get in the way of people doing things. I don't understand why we have a lot of these application processes. I know sometimes that people require it because maybe it's something that was included in the law, etc. But I'll give you, we don't really need for people, we don't need to wait for people to want to apply to college. It's free. For a lot of our public universities, particularly when you think about community college and state universities, they're open admissions primarily. So anybody with a high school diploma can be told, you can go to college and you can go for free. So we're already talking about, could we just admit people directly? Can't we just go out there and directly admit people into our colleges? This way, it's not so much a choice of whether they want, you've got to know, along with your diploma, you get an admissions letter and you can go to college, and then you'll know whether it's free or not based on that information, right? And then people are filling out the form. So for us, talking about ways to skip the middle person and then go right to getting people into the schools is going to be a game changer, right? The second is that we need to make sure that we are talking about value in the way that value needs to be talked about. And so this is why for us, being able to say that learning pays is a big deal, because so many folks are talking about how it doesn't, how it's not necessary. Mr. Secretary, you brought up something earlier which says people are even asking us, should everyone go to college? That is probably one of the most frustrating questions that you can get for someone in our role, because I know when somebody asks us that question, they're not talking about their kids or their grandchildren, they're talking about somebody else's kid, right? And it's probably a kid that looks like me. And that's very problematic when people are questioning whether or not college is of value, folks, because what I want to do is to create an environment where everyone has the choice to go to college. They can choose not to go. But it's not a question about whether or not they're employable. So those are the things that we're trying to do, and we've got to get better at that narrative. So thank you, Secretary.
And you're more than welcome to come through us. Valentina knows. I mean, we are the will of getting the information out there, by all means.
There's one other thing, and I think you could really help with this. So through the Secretary's leadership, actually, we put more and more investments in adult education. And I see an amazing opportunity, everybody. So I've heard a figure, but I'm not sure if this figure is completely accurate, but I've heard that there's almost 150,000 foreign-born educated adults in our Commonwealth, but they're educated in their home country and don't have the bridge to get those similar jobs. There's been some pilot programs like doctors, but there's so many other opportunities. Imagine, free community college, we have our adult ed program, and so our biggest request right now for adult ed or demand is around English language, which is a start. But it makes sense because our adults already have a level of skill set and education from their home countries. What I talked to the Commissioner Ortega about is, let's partner together to expand the bridge programs through the community colleges, through other nonprofit partners that our adult ed department already works with, because it's an amazing level of talent that we're not tapping into. And by the way, they're our parents. They're literally the parents of our students. So imagine, as Commissioner Kershaw and I are working with the students, I get to partner with Commissioner Ortega and our adult ed program to actually help the parents. I mean, that is an amazing opportunity, and to your point, we gotta get that word out. And frankly, we wanna feel the pressure of do more of this. From employers, from the families themselves, because it's such a huge opportunity.
Sorry. Thank you so much for everything that has been brought to the table, because my mom, this is a really funny situation. I was telling Martha, by the way, I'm from Mas Latino, journalist. My mom has a daycare, and she works pretty close with the EEC. I came to this country when I was 15. I am now a multilingual person. And I was in high school, and then I went to college. So all of this is like a full circle moment. I'm like, wow. This is your life? Yeah, this is my life. I'm like, well, my mom gets benefited by the many programs that the EEC has. So I do have two questions. One for the EEC department, and one for the higher education. So I don't know, which one do you want me to start? So I am really intrigued when you say that you're the workforce behind the workforce, because it is true. But a lot of the programs are missing out opportunities because there's not, a lot of the early education programs are reliant on family child care programs that are very different from big programs, you know, big child care education public programs, right? But there is a big limitations for providers right now, that is housing. And a lot of landlords are not approving of it, and that's denying them the access to create a program and denying access to kids to have accessible programs. What is the EEC doing right now, moving forward with that kind of situations?
That's a great question. Your mom's a family child care educator?
Yes,
So
she
you
has a
grew up
program
with her
in
having-
Boston, yes.
Yeah. How many kids does she have?
She has 10 kids right now, but a lot of them, her colleagues are not able to have their programs open up because landlords are denying them of.
So one of the things that the task force has been focused on, so one of the reasons we were really interested in bringing this task force together is that it had an opportunity to kind of look beyond EEC. So EEC has authority around our own regulations, how many programs. We are looking at expanding up to 12, which will help many programs that are already open expand. It'll help families, also I think improve the business model. But we have some homeowners, and we also have many folks who are renting. And so a lot of that is a sort of state-local conversation that's happening. So we've been really engaged with the cross-agency task force to really think about how we can work with municipalities around their own zoning laws. The legislature recently passed a law that made it really clear that our rules need to supersede what's happening locally. So if municipalities are coming in and putting rules in either for renters or zoning rules that limit the number of kids, now we're able to kind of more authoritatively say our rules are in place. But maybe part of the important thing is that the providers know who to talk to at EEC to make sure that if they have a problem, that we can help defend them in that case and support their work. So we should talk about how to get that information out.
No, definitely, because I have noticed, I'm very close to it, so I have noticed that a lot of women in our community, it is mainly women, that access to these programs. They're the main childcare providers, and they're mainly women of color also. And they get access to the education, so they get ready to take care of these kids in the earliest steps of their development. But then when it comes to them opening their programs, it has been a big obstacle, so it's concerning. So thank you for your.
Well, I just think the other thing I would just say is that I think for years we've really been thinking about childcare programs as sort of just educational facilities, but they are also small businesses within their communities. And so a lot of the work we've been doing is trying to expand access to small business opportunities, grants, loans, technical assistance, tax assistance, information technology assistance that really engages with our childcare programs as the small businesses they are. I mean, they're building your mom is building economic opportunity in her community for herself and the assistants that work there as well as the families. So, we'd be happy to talk more about how to get kind of information out to the programs with all of your help.
Thank you, Commissioner. And the second question that I had for high school and higher education is that MCAS now being deleted in all the decisions being taken and changing, as Gabby was saying, and was later was saying, all these parameters of success are being taken away. So I wonder, with the elimination of MCAS as graduation requirement and academic success indicator, what measures will ensure that multilingual and low-income students maintain high standards without losing differentiated support?
Yeah, so again, going back to what the evidence says, first of all, giving them access to the content. That's our mass core requirement. And most of our multilingual students are in younger ages, right? We'll have to have different pathways for our students that come in at a later age, right? But it's a small group, right? Most of our students come in elementary, maybe sometimes even middle grades, but we have time to really making sure they have access to the coursework. That, the research is really clear. I think the other is making sure that even though MCAS still exists for accountability, as we implement our new tools around in the course and proposing capstone, I think there's really interesting opportunities to show how students can show mastery, because what I try to explain to our, so many of our districts that are getting multilingual for the first time, many times they misjudge their students. They actually have a lot of skill and knowledge. They just don't have the language. And I'll tell you, it's really frustrating for someone who's a multilingual student, where you in your head know exactly what you want to answer, but you have to translate it, right? Because you don't have the language yet. And so I think it's also us working really closely with our educators to make sure they separate the issues, right? Because many of our students coming from, whether they're born here and they're multilingual or they're coming from other countries, they have certain skill sets. And it's really the language acquisition we got to couple. And then, of course, it's how we partner together, because it can't stop at high school. It has to continue through all the amazing programs that Commissioner Ortega has.
Cada día, los autobuses escolares transportan a nuestros niños de manera segura, pero solo si los conductores respetan la ley. Las luces rojas intermitentes significan alto. Pasar un autobús escolar en esta situación no solo es ilegal, sino peligroso. La vida de los niños está en riesgo cuando los conductores ignoran esta señal. Protégelos deteniéndote, sin excepciones. No detenerse tiene graves consecuencias. Haz tu parte por la seguridad y por tu comunidad. Haz luces rojas intermitentes en un autobús escolar significan que debes detenerte inmediatamente. Se trata de seguridad. Se trata de vidas.